Now my political panel is still with me. Mary Cray is here from the Labour Party, William Dartmouth from UKIP, Brian Panic from the Liberal Democrats, Greg Clark, he was with us, he may have just nipped off for a moment. I don't know if he's gone off to have a cup of tea. Come back and join us, you're always welcome at this stage of the show, Greg. And of course, Zoe Williams from The Guardian is now rejoined us, so has George Parker. We do not lack for company at this stage of the day. And now I will say a formal good morning and welcome to Brian May,
good morning,
the guitarist of Queen, who is now a campaigner for common decency in politics. Now, I'm going to lay on with a trowel. Here's a reminder why he's one of the greatest guitarists in rock history.
Oh.
So, I never say things as nice as that to political guests. I just think I'm going to say it to you, if only as a form of therapy. You are campaigning, Brian,
I am indeed,
for decency in politics. Tell me why. Aren't most politicians decent?
I would say not, sadly. There are some very decent ones. There's a couple sitting with me right here. But I would say from my experience in the last 5 years of lobbying almost constantly in Portcullis House and thereby, a whole lot of them are there for the wrong reasons. They're there as a career. They're there to represent business interests. I mean, it's an appalling thing to say, but it's absolutely true. And we don't really have a democracy because the MPs are not free to vote in many cases according to their conscience or according to the wishes of their constituents. They vote according to what the whip tells them to.
Yeah.
And I think we're really in a dreadful state. So common decency is about trying to shift that, trying to give us our democracy back, give us our voice back.
Yeah, I mean, you're not holding back here, are you? I mean, the Westminster is almost devoid of common decency. That politicians in large numbers are there to serve interests other than the national interests. Their career are presumably, you're suggesting, above the interests of the country or even their party. That's a sweeping set of generalisations.
It's a fairly serious accusation. Yes, I think a lot of people go into it with good intentions, but because of the system, they become corrupt. And it's almost
What do you call
inevitable.
the system, Brian? Do you mean
the parliamentary
you
system?
mentioned the parliamentary whip? Mm-hmm. Do not party members in the House of Commons have to vote in accordance with the set of views that got them elected? And to do that, I'm being devil's advocate to an extent.
Absolutely,
but there's a point
the whip is there for a reason.
You've got to vote the way that your party has been elected to vote.
Yes, it's about enabling them to deliver their manifesto, if you like.
Yeah.
But I believe it's become very abused, and it's used to bully MPs, and we've seen it firsthand. We've seen people who would have voted for us on, for instance, trying to stop the badger cull, but who couldn't because, you know, in the case of one lady, she wouldn't have been able to see her children the next weekend or the weekend after that. So you suddenly realise this is really an abuse. People are being bullied into not voting according to their conscience.
Yeah.
That's just one of the elements which I think is really very...
Well, just in a nutshell then, because I want to open it up to our political guests and our commentator guests as well. Just describe in a nutshell the kind of politics that you believe isn't just desirable but attainable.
The common decency is about voting for a person rather than a party. You know, what we're saying is you're feeling probably that you have no reason to vote. A lot of people feel, you know, they're not going to make any difference. It's not necessarily apathy. It's a perception that their vote does not make a difference, particularly in a safe seat. What we're saying is come in with us on Common Decency, come to the website, and we will all get together and we will swarm around good people, decent people.
Does your notion of decency sit in a particular place on the political spectrum, Brian? Because I know that you've got a lot of time for a lot of the things that the Green Party says.
No,
would that apply to UKIP? Was there anything on that platform you got some...
We haven't got a UKIPper yet. You never know, but we may do, you know, because totally. I mean, really, we are very proud of being colourblind. We're supporting candidates of all the major parties, plus an NHA party, plus an independent. So, you know, it is definitely not allied to one political persuasion. We're an action group which is trying to put decent people back into politics and to reclaim our voice.
And would a decent person, by your definition, be, for example, a member of Parliament who voted for deep cuts in public spending? Let's just take it from that end of the spectrum. £30 billion of cuts in public spending by 2018. Could that be compatible with your idea of decency? I could have given other examples from elsewhere.
Many examples, yeah. Well, I'm not standing for Parliament, so, you know, in a sense, I don't have to give an answer to that question. You know, I'm not an evasive person,
sure.
but what we're trying to do is democratically determine whether people are decent or not. So it's a business of feedback. Yes, I have certain ideas. I mean, I could answer your question, but I'm not a political candidate, and I would say let my people decide whether they think that's good or not, and give us that feedback, and then on May the 6th, we will say who we think that people should vote for.
You did toy with the idea of actually running, didn't you, as a member?
Yeah, I toyed with it for about 5 minutes. I actually don't think it would have been profitable. not profitable isn't the right word. It wouldn't have been a good thing for me. It would have, in a sense, disabled me, because I can be very free as an activist.
Well, that's a good time to bring in certainly the political guests before the commentators, if I may. I think Greg Clark is back from the Tory party. Is there anything you could say to Brian May, the guitarist legend, that might persuade him that being a member of Parliament is worth doing as well?
Well, I should apologise, John, because I lost the connection there, so I didn't hear Brian. But without having heard what he had to say, yeah, it is a fantastic privilege to be a member of Parliament, not just to be able to make your difference to the national debate, but to stand up for individual men, women and young people in your constituency. And some of the things that I've been proudest of achieving have been the corrections of injustices that have been done to particular people in my constituency. And it's an amazing privilege to be able to do that.
Well, let me ask Mary Cray there, another point that Brian May brought up, the idea that MPs are clones, maybe they're careerists. A lot of them, Brian was arguing, are pretty much careerists, and that's it. But following the party line, on pain of retribution by the powers that be in the party, he has particular contempt for that. Are you going to defend that?
Yeah, I am, because we're all elected on party manifestos, and my party political views happen to coincide with Brian, so I'm sure he'd class me... in certain areas. So I'm sure I'd be one of the lucky ones to be classed as decent. But I think Brian's got to be very careful going around calling people corrupt, which we are not. And secondly, disparaging...
I don't think he said corrupt, to be fair.
He used the word corrupt. No, he used the word corrupt. You used the word corrupt, Brian. And you also said we don't, professional politicians. Well, you can't have it both ways. You can't have Tory MPs being paid outside Parliament representing business interests and then not pay people wages. You either have to have a professional class, and I would argue if you get a plumber in to fix something in your house, you want a professional plumber. I don't see what the problem is with so-called professional politicians.
Do you want to come back on that, Brian?
Yeah, I agree with you, of course. You make a very good point. I didn't think I'd be arguing against you.
Come on, let's have a go.
But the difference is...
You were doing selfies a moment ago.
I think a lot of these things, are down to the people actually operating these principles, and I think it is abused. That's all I can say. In some cases, of course, you're right. But in some cases, I think we need to have a system where people can be free once they're in the Commons to be a person rather than just a member of a party. I think that's what's gone wrong. That's why the major party in power can bully everyone in the House and get a policy through which is against the will of the people. And
William Dartmouth from UKIP. Do you want to add a word?
Yes. Well, first I'd like to say I'm a great admirer of Dr. May, if I can give you your full title.
You don't get any votes for calling. Not even
the astrophysicist.
But in fact, perhaps I can cheer you up, because UKIP councillors, as a question of fact, have a free vote in councils. And also, you talked about career politicians. I'm a UKIP member of the European Parliament, and I spend my time trying to bring about British exit and to do myself out of a job. So actually, we've actually got quite a lot to offer. But I think the interesting thing about Common Decency is that it's another symptom of the disillusionment with the established parties, and it's actually part of a much
but not
bigger
yours,
picture.
Clearly.
What?
Not yours.
Well, we aren't an established party.
Well, you are pretty well now, William.
We are just 21 years old, which in the history of British politics is the flick of an eyelash. Yeah. So we are not an established party.
I don't think Brian was encompassing the administration of the Duke of Wellington, to be fair. He's talking about fairly recent politics.
Well, I think I'm making a rather serious point. I mean, we are a new party. A lovely idea if you think we're an established party. And if we were an established party, perhaps the establishment media and the others and the established political parties wouldn't be so abusive of us. Which is another question, which perhaps we should have.
Well, I like to think we're very civilised in this studio. Brian,
in this studio you are. In this studio you are, but not in the Question Time studios. Not in the
Let's
Question
not go there.
Studios.
Let's not go there, William.
Well, it's a very important point.
Okay.
I was hoping I was going to be able to raise it.
Brian.
Pride.
I think it's a very good point, and the disenfranchisement is why I'm here, yes. I think so many people out there feel that their vote won't count. What I'm trying to do is give them a way of making their vote count. And I wish this was TV in some ways, because I have pie charts. My favourite things are pie charts because they're so graphic. Yeah. And if you look at a pie chart for any of the constituencies last year, you'll see that the so-called safe seats, someone will have a huge piece of the pie, but an even bigger piece of the pie will be all the people who did not vote. Now, if all these people got together this time, through our scheme, if you like, through our project, then these people could be unseated. So in a sense, there is no safe seat and no vote is wasted if you go...
Before I bring in Brian Paddock from the Liberal Democrats, Brian May, do you not contribute to the problem, inadvertently as it may be, by describing politicians as as corrupt, as careerist.
I didn't say every politician.
You deepen the perception of the problem, which in turn makes the problem worse.
No, I think awareness is vital. And
you don't give much credit to politicians. I mean, you mentioned one or two here and there. To be fair, you do, but
I make a huge distinction between decent ones and non-decent ones. I suppose that's what I'm
Brian
saying.
Paddick.
Brian, music to my ears. I mean, I think almost every Liberal Democrat MP would say to voters, vote for the person before thinking about the party. And really, there is no such thing as a safe Liberal Democrat seat, which is why
Say that again, Brian.
That's why Liberal Democrat. That's why Liberal Democrat MPs work so hard for their local people. Why they listen so carefully to local people, and why the whips are not as severe in the House of Commons with the Liberal Democrats than they are with the other parties.
I remember the Lib Dem whip delivering the vote that was ushered in 5 years of cuts, and it was a Tory whip, Adrian Saunders.
That'll be the cuts that the Labour agreed to in a vote towards the end of the last Parliament.
Zoe Williams.
I think you're being a bit disingenuous, because I don't believe you agree with every single thing you've ever voted for. I don't believe that you are always with the Labour Party. Just because I like you. So I can't believe that many of the things Labour did you were fully on board with. Now, the fact is, you do get... Politicians make I don't think politicians are corrupt. I don't think there is very much corruption in British politics. I think there's a kind of surrender. So they surrender to business interests without even being paid for it.
Small C corruption, not big C corruption.
I think it's a really dangerous word to use.
Well, exactly. So I just said I don't think it is corrupt. I just think it's quite.
I'm going to give the last word before we wrap this segment to Brian May, because you don't often get guitar legends in this studio. So go on, Brian.
I'm going to defend the word corruption because I think it does apply, and I think you don't even have to go inside the House of Commons to see it. Why don't we have proportional representation? Why don't we have...
People voted against it in 2011, Brian.
Yeah,
we had a referendum on it, and people said no.
Yes, but you could let me finish. Why do we not have...
Welcome to politics.
Well, I think people were bullied into that, and I think, the amount of... For instance, why do we not have a cap on national spending on election campaigns? The Tory party has 2 or 3 times as much money to spend in the next few weeks as you do. Do you not think that's unfair? How can that be fair?
Last question this to you, Brian. Before I say thank you and goodbye to everyone for the time being. Brian, what do you think is going to happen in this election? I don't know. I wonder if you've got a notion of
I
thinking
think we'll
you do.
have a hung parliament, and I sincerely hope we don't get another coalition which will act as much of a bully as a single party.
All right. Brian May, thank you for coming in. To my political panel, thank you very much.